Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Creative Leadership Podcast. My name is Arne van Oostrom, and this podcast is brought to you by Blue Sky Republic. If you want to receive our awesome newsletter, just let me know on whatever Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, you can find me. Each month, the newsletter will focus on a specific theme, and this month we are focusing on creativity and what creativity is. And today on the show, we have Sam Furness, and Sam is one of the most creative persons I've ever met. Now, I have to tell you, sometimes I talk to people on the show that I've known for a long time. Sometimes they're really good friends of mine. Sometimes I know them a little bit, and sometimes I don't know them at all. Now, Sam, I didn't know Sam. This is the first time I actually talked to him. But you might be able to tell that while we're talking, I am actually discovering that we are so like-minded. There's so many things, and he's a lot younger than I am. So I really recognize his journey, his quest. So I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you will enjoy the conversation too. So here we go.
I would say that I'm on a lifelong expanding quest to discover all the different possible edges of what it means to be a creative person. I'm fascinated with the idea that the lives that each of us have led, the things that we're passionate about, our upbringings, our education, our friendship circles, our jobs, all of these individual sort of ingredients that we have in our lives shape the way that we each perceive the world on a day-to-day basis. So the way that I see the world is different to the way you see the world, even if we live in the same neighborhood or even in the same street. And I think from a creative standpoint, it's really, well, and just from a human standpoint too, it's really interesting and exciting and crucial to kind of step out of our own ways of seeing and into other people's ways of seeing, as uncomfortable as that may be sometimes. But I actually think that kind of through that, there is a huge amount of inspiration and joy and creativity to be found. So I kind of conduct lots of different experiments to kind of step into other people's ways of seeing. That's who I am right now.
Well, that's a lot. Let's start with the lifelong quest, because that's intriguing. When did that quest start, or when were you conscious of? When was the first time you kind of felt like, this is a quest? Or do you know?
I absolutely do know. It's the term quest has actually been a more recent kind of development, but the first point that I knew that I kind of wanted to say, let's do things a little bit differently, was the end of 2015, heading into 2016. That question actually of like kind of who am I, who are you, has been something that I've been wrestling with for a while. I feel like I get very attached to certain ideas or sort of mediums or communities, and I'll sort of really get involved with them for a period of time, and then I kind of move on to the next thing. And I guess I sort of take some of the ideas and the feelings and stuff that from the thing that I've left behind with me to the next thing. But, growing up, I was always in like acting was my thing. From super, super young age, I just love performing, love being on stage. And then that kind of morphed into music in my kind of mid-teens. And then it kind of went back to theatre a little bit. And then I started working behind the scenes in music management. And it was, 2015 that I'd been out of university for like 4 years, maybe. And 4 years, 2015. Yeah. And I'd got this amazing job managing music artists at a company here in London, working with some of the biggest bands in the UK, and even at that point, a couple of probably biggest artists in the world. Some medium-sized bands, and then some baby bands, and it was amazing. I knew that I had kind of wanted to work in music. I kind of imagined growing up that maybe I would be the person on stage, but as it usually happens, you normally kind of end up behind the scenes somewhere. And it was great. I was getting to sort of tick off that list of things that you hope you want to do in a sort of exciting, creative, professional life. But there was a point towards end of 2015 where something felt just the equilibrium wasn't right between the creative work I was doing for other people and the creative things that I was doing for myself. Throughout my sort of upbringing, as I said, it was theatre, music. There was always a vehicle for my own creative expression. Whether or not I had something profound to say or anything was kind of irrelevant, but there was always just a vehicle for just the playfulness of creativity. And after university, when that kind of framework falls away, the community, a curriculum, the spaces in which to be creative, and sometimes, I studied like contemporary performance and stuff at uni. The tools and spaces for that at university or a school are generally just an empty room with some chairs in it. Like it's, yes, you're not dealing with kind of high-tech stuff, but there is something so amazing about turning up to a seminar room and going on. I know for the next 3 hours that actually this room is full of possibility. This room is a space to imagine, and it can be so much more than a empty room with a circle of chairs.
But it's actually, that's really interesting anyway, that exactly what you're saying. A space is not just a space. It can be many things. It depends on your kind of, do you create that safe space for people to do things and to actually change that space into something else. I think the physical spaces are really intriguing in that way. They can be many things, but we only see them for what they are. So a seminar room is a seminar room. So but they don't have to be. I think that idea of kind of leaving things behind, so being involved in something very deeply, and then all of a sudden you're moving on to something else. I do recognize that a lot in my own kind of life. But I think there's something there that do you see yourself, because of that, do you see yourself as a more like a generalist, or someone who's an expert in something, or is it because that quest kind of feels a little bit like, will you ever stop the quest? That's basically maybe my question. Will you ever say, this is the thing, and I'm going to be an expert in this thing, this is all I'm going to do? Or do you feel you're like an expert in many things, or what how do you feel about
I hope to be an expert in the quest.
Exactly. Well, there you go.
If that's honestly, I've realized that creative exploration is an art form in itself, and I'm it's a way of kind of feeling like I'm sharpening, my tools, and I'm getting better at something, at a craft, but I'm also sort of, so you've kind of got that inwards kind of, two lines coming together, but I also feel like I'm expanding at the same time. So to quickly dip back to the question before, basically end of 2015, I decided I've got to do things differently. So, and all throughout 2016, in my spare time, I decided I'm going to explore a different type of creativity every month for a year. And it was really just a way to just have a bit of structure for creativity outside of my work. And
can you explain that a little bit more? So what kind of creativities, if that's a word, did you actually explore?
At first, it was just about trying to learn some new skills. I knew I wanted to start doing creative stuff again. That was for me, not for the artists that I was working with. But I didn't really feel the call of music and theatre acting, because there was a reason I hadn't been doing it for those last few years, and it clearly wasn't calling me. So I thought, right, got to try and find something new. Where do I begin? Like, yeah, because I just, that were the only ways that I really knew how to express myself in music and acting. So it started as a bit of an exercise to just be like, maybe I'll just hop, skip, and jump between a few different things throughout the year, and I'll find the new thing, and then I'll be like, great, now I can spend the rest of my life being a photographer. Done. So it was about learning new skills to begin with, but so some of the months were actual kind of art form based. Photography was one of them. Origami was my very first month. Cool. Animation, drawing, but then I got broader with some of the months too, like food, color, storytelling. What some got really, really specific. Like my grandfather has had a lifelong love and passion, obsession, really, with aviation. And flight, and a lot of my sort of memories of him growing up are him making model airplanes in his shed, and he's an amazing craftsman. And so I spent a month just exploring like aviation and the art of flying, and that took me down loads of interesting paths. I did other months on, it was the year that Brexit happened. So I did 1 month just about the EU, and I tried to experience something in London for every EU member state. I think I got to about 21 states out of 26, 27, which I was pretty happy with over the course of a month in your spare time. That's quite an undertaking, let me tell you. Yeah. And really just what started as a year of thinking, oh, I'm just going to learn some new skills, suddenly turned into this like, whoa, actually every single month is radically changing the way not only I see my creativity, but the way that I move through the world, the way that I see London is changing massively from when I'm exploring origami or photography or animation. And so that's where this kind of quest mentality came from.
Yeah, and that connects to what you started with, saying that you're really interested in stepping into sort of the shoes of other people and kind of really, being sort of seeing the world through their eyes.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So basically, that's what you've done. You went like, now I'm going to be an expert in origami. How is that? What's life like when you do that? It's a little bit
peaceful.
Yeah, well, no, I think it's really inspirational. So I have lots of questions about this, but I do have to kind of I get this image of almost the opposite of what you just described, is almost like like a Japanese craftsperson that spends his or her life all about this one little thing that they can do, maybe bonsai trees or something, or some crafts, some woodwork or painting or drawing technique or something, and being completely, being that, just being that skill, being the craft, being that one thing, which is almost the opposite of what you kind of describe, which sounds, so in a way, being that craft I'm always jealous of this crafts person. So I always,
Me too.
Well, yeah, there you go. So, I mean, I started out as a photographer, and I painted, I did theater, I did stand-up comedy, I did all that stuff. I'm dipping in all these worlds, and I'm always restless in a way. But also, I'm always jealous of people like my wife. She's a designer. That's what she does. She's really good at that. She just is a crafts person, really. And it was like, she makes things, right? And then they're there. Is that something? So it's interesting. Is there like, do you feel that you have? I don't think you already answered the question. You don't want to land anywhere. You don't want to land anywhere. You don't want to be. The quest is the place. Right? How do you create? How do you carve out that as a sort of a space, as a place? Because it sounds really restless, and maybe for other people, they might also say like, what are you gonna be? What's your when you grow up?
Oh,
What are you gonna be when
oh
you grow
God.
up? Because we're
No, I
programmed,
know.
but we're programmed
Yeah.
that way, right? So it's
Yeah.
in our school system. It's in our upbringing most of the time. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up, right?
Mm.
And now what you're saying is like I don't something in between everything. Like,
Yeah.
is that a thing? How do you?
It's it's something that I think about a hell of a lot. Um, with with exploring new stuff all the time, because after that year in 2016 of doing something every month, I kind of just decided, oh, maybe this is just like a way to live. Yeah, maybe this is just a way to live, and it doesn't have to just be a project. So I just kind of kept doing it, not like religiously every month, but I'd kind of dip in and out to sort of when I was quote unquote questing, um, as a way to just feel like when I just needed that top up of connection to the world, meeting new people, it just felt like a framework that I could just snap back into my life, do it for 3 6 months, pause for another 6 or a year maybe. It's just a way to kind of keep things exciting. But yeah, no, I part of me still thinks, I'm like, oh, maybe one of these quests I'm just gonna find the thing. Like, there's still a little naive like
Yeah.
part of me, but no, I love. I don't know. I think it all. Yeah, I think there's a. This maybe sounds kind of pretentious, but like you can live artistically. Like, you can make your life a piece of art,
Yeah, totally.
and I kind of feel like that's what I'm trying to perfect, is just like, rather than thinking that the craft is something that I have to have a room for and I have to have like specific tools for, and yeah, space, and it's something that I must spend dedicated, this next 3 hours I'm going to be doing this. Like, what about all of the in between moments of our lives, the cracks of a day, like, the walking to the supermarket and, going to work and stuff like that. I'm like, what if you can all turn that into a kind of creative artistic experience, even if it's just for you? Like,
Yeah. Actually, what you're saying is, I just realized that. So we talked about kind of Japanese craftsperson people,
mm,
but there's also this Japanese kind of philosophy
philosophy,
called ma,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
And there's this like, the sort of the essence of the pot is sort of the space, is
Yeah.
the inside space and the space around. So it's like the inverse of the object itself. So actually, you're saying these are all kind of places. These are all defined objects and spaces, but actually the essence of that thing is what's around it. So the essence. So we talked just about room. The essence of the room is not the walls
Mm,
and the floor. That's not the essence of the room. The
mm,
essence is
hmm,
the space in between
hmm,
and the
hmm.
space in between the walls and outside of the walls. That defines the space,
Yeah,
not the walls. So
definitely.
in a way, if you're looking at life that way, that's what you're describing. You're saying I have all these defined, photography, origami. These are all kind of defined things that you can do. But it is actually the essence of it is what's around, which is
Yeah,
in a way the way we live our lives, which is
yeah,
creativity, which is being
yeah.
empathic, which is actually about connections and going
Mm,
through life. And I think it's a really interesting way of looking at things. And I don't think it's an odd thing. It's just that we are not programmed to look at that, but
hmm.
I think everybody senses it. I think it's there, except that I think that's because it's the essence of everything
Hmm.
we do. But we are focused so much on the defined things. Everything needs a definition. And if it doesn't have a definition, it doesn't exist because we don't have words for it. And if we don't have
Yeah,
words for it, if we don't have a name for it,
yeah,
it's not there and we can't talk about it, which is fascinating. So in a
yeah.
way, what you're doing, that's why I think you're struggling with describing it, which I also always do, is like, because there's no
Yeah.
language. There's
Hmm.
no, it only sounds like you're just messing about.
Right.
You're wandering around. You're like, you're not really want to do anything. You don't want to have a
Mm,
job. You don't want it's like,
yeah.
it's not defined. And here's my only sort of my personal experience with this. To me, when I started really being involved in design thinking in the sort of 2004, 5, it wasn't defined at that time. It was, to me, I always called it that space in between. But after a while, it became defined, and now I have been looking for a way out, because I feel really like I don't want to be. But I started this company called Design Thinkers, and so I was really like, my Twitter handle was Design Thinkers. So I was like,
You're in it.
I'm in it. For many years, I'm already like, I don't. I'm looking for that space in between again. I'm like exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Kind of like, where do I don't want to be. It has a definition, and people are discussing it and talking about it, and they've like in their profile and it's a thing. That's not. It loses its interest. I lose interest, and it's just So that kind of if you listen to my kind of thinking about this, is that something does it resonate with you? Is that something you recognize?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the main thing that comes up for me there is, you talk about if you can't define it, then it doesn't exist. And I think we as human beings wrestle with that on a day-to-day basis. If we can't define ourselves, then we don't exist. If you want to take it to that kind of level, I think people. I've certainly felt it, and I watch my friends and my peers go through it too. That people just want to know what label they can give themselves, so they can just be like, okay, that's what I am, and this means that this gives me a path ahead. Like for so long, like I have quite a few friends now that kind of work in these kind of in between spaces, which I still don't really know. I have no idea what, like, the work that I do now with these quests, like I have no idea what industry it is. Absolutely no idea. And honestly, like then the amount of times that I've spoken with friends, how frustrating it is when you're filling out a funding application, or you're like on anything that has basically a drop down menu on it, and I'm like, for God's sake, I literally don't fit in any of these things, like, or neither does my company.
The drop down menus,
the drop down menu, and I'm like, well, what if we are a drop, like, what if I am a drop down menu? Like, if I'm the drop down menu, where do I fit the drop down menu?
Exactly.
So it's I completely get it. But it's over years of doing these quests, and I think I started using the word quest around 2017, 2018. And now, fast forward a few years, I'm 18 months into running these creative quests that other people come and join. So, and I'm 6 months into it being 6 months. Yeah, 6 months into it being my full-time job now. I stopped managing music artists 6 months ago. I was kind of part-time between music management and this, which was caused all sorts of other sort of identity crisis moments, too, having two sort of professions that very different from each other. One was about being behind the curtain and supporting the artist. The other is very much about me running my own creative thing. Is not usual for a manager in the music industry to also have their own artistic endeavors and be loud and proud about it. Normally it was like, oh, kind of don't let other people know about that, because that might make them see me as less of a manager, or it's a weird. Honestly, the music industry is full of closet artists.
Because I mean, I think that's why you kind of get into the music industry in a way, like you just described, like you actually want it to be on stage, but not every. There's only a few people who actually make it, and the rest is going to kind of be supportive. Basically, I think most of the roadies actually wanted to be the guitar player or something like that. As far as I can tell.
It's full of It's you see.
Yeah, but why is that? Why do you think that's the? Because that sounds like a almost like a paradox. Because in a way, you want sort of the
Hmm.
manager and the people in the music industry to understand the
Yeah.
creatives, and and you understand them by being them, being like them,
Yeah.
or at least right. So how does
I
that?
think so. Yeah. It's a question I tried to answer for a long time. When I was thinking about doing, I knew I wanted to leave. This was years ago. I ended up going part time, but I was originally thinking that I was going to actually just leave my job and just sort of try and do creative things. I had no idea what I wanted to do other than these quests that I was doing, but I had no idea. I was like, how does this become a thing that makes any money? Like it was just a bit of a mess. Yeah, this was quite a few years ago now, like four years ago or so. But I ended up going part time and doing some kind of creative consulting work. But all the way up to that moment where I was going to have this kind of defining conversation with my boss and be like, look, I just don't know if I want to do this anymore. I've got all this other stuff that I want to explore, and I just don't know how I can do all this creative stuff and still be a manager. Like all of that confusion came from spending probably a solid year, like looking around the music industry, people that I knew in the UK, people that I knew in the States, and other places, and looking at like, okay, are there any people I can find that are managers or booking agents or publishers or working at record labels that also like part of their identity is that they are also they have their own artistic practice or they run a different creative company. And you can find examples where an art has got to a point and either they've like they were in a band once and now they've become a manager, or they're still a really successful artist and they've launched a record label. I mean, you look at the likes of
Sure,
like,
sure, sure. Yeah,
Jay-Z or whatever, like,
yeah, exactly. Right.
they're business people too. Um, but you just don't really find it as an example the other way around. Not that I could find anyway. So that in my brain just made me go like, oh well, maybe you just can't do it, rather than just going, well, I'm going to
Right.
be the person that does
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
At first it was, oh, I guess you can't do it, but then over time that the sort of feeling me was like, no, actually be the person that does it. Like there must be other people out there that feel the same way as you. Like
Of course.
just start
Yeah.
trying it. So yeah, I kind of worked in this I would call myself a parallel pather.
Ah,
Because I was
nice.
pursuing parallel paths. Like
That's great.
I was like, no, actually I want to be an artist manager and support the artists that I work with. And, I work with some incredible acts and I didn't want to give that up, but I also wanted to pursue this path of being a creative person myself. So for 3 years, that's what I did. But yeah, I'm 6 months into just doing creative quests as a full-time thing now and guiding other people through these kind of month-long uh, journeys through different ways of perceiving the world and being creative.
And yeah, I want to know more about that. But before I dive into that, I kind of want to understand where this all comes from. Because is it something that you? I mean, is it your parents? Are they creatives? Are they or do you have any or other examples? I mean, where as a kid did you started? I mean, did you know is there connection? And I know you're interested in it, as you just said, like, there's what shaped you, what are the things that the experiences that you had or the way you were brought up? Are there any things that you can kind of link to? You're saying, yeah, because this happened or my parents were like this, or
Mm.
is that something?
Um, yeah, there's definitely a few things there. My very lucky to be from an extremely creative family. First of all,
Hmm.
everybody in my family does something different with their creativity. I think that probably has a lot to do with it. My
Hmm.
dad is a phenomenal guitar player. My mom is amazing with kind of interior design and um, craft stuff. But I'd say yeah, design, kind of interior design is kind of where I see her mostly. Um, my my granny on my dad's side, who is definitely my kind of number one creative hero in the world. She is an incredible painter, but just very talented crafts person with her hands. She was also a professional dancer when she was growing up, before she kind of started a family. And my grandfather is amazing with woodwork and models. My uncle is a landscape kind of architect. Like it's pretty broad, like lots of different stuff. So I think growing up around that
kind of
a lot, yeah. And yeah, totally. Oh, and my mom, my grandma on my mom's side, she was just just super curious. Like I would say that even just her fascination with the world and kind of architecture and history, and she just would like devour books and write all mad notes in them. Like after she died, when my mom was going through her stuff, like she was, yeah, amazing, like looking through these old books, and she would leave notes in there. It's like she was expecting somebody to, I was like, she couldn't have been leaving these for her. It's like she kind of just wanted to leave her print on these books so other people could maybe experience it one day. I don't know. So I think a cocktail of all of those things definitely kind of showed me that there are lots of different ways to be creative. But I think the main thing in this is that none of them have really, they're all doing these things quote unquote semi-professionally. Like the money was coming from other places. So I guess, it would be this, and I hate using this term, but I guess people would be like, oh, they're like amateurs.
Like
And it's like, and it's a hobby.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
honestly, like it drives me absolutely insane because it just completely takes away from the weight and I think the significance of what they've done for themselves. And, and it's,
yeah.
I really actually I have a serious bone to pick with the word hobby. It's probably my least favorite word in the English language. Because I don't think the word hobby really carries the weight of the thing of what quote unquote hobbies can mean to people. So you say, oh yeah, my hobby is painting. But for me, like hobby, the word is associated with kind of, I don't know, it's quite an archaic word. You think of it kind of Enid Blyton, like, hobby, oh yes, we're good, we're doing,
you're not really
stamp
good
collecting.
at it.
It's like, just a little pastime that you do.
It's not serious. It's more like,
it's just
I'm gonna do meditation, or I'm just gonna like
it just doesn't carry a kind of like a weight to it for some reason. To me, it just doesn't carry it.
Don't you think it's like, so the way now I hear, and I feel exactly the same. So I have what people would say many hobbies.
Yeah.
I don't consider them hobbies. I consider them possible career choices.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they're part of you, like in some way. Yeah.
But after after many years, and I'm a bit older than you are, I actually started realizing that after a long time, I started realizing, wait a minute, it's all those things that are actually part of me.
Yeah.
That's who I am. It's
totally.
I stopped playing so I played in a band, and I quit because at one point the drummer said that he really liked rehearsing with the band because it's such a great hobby. He considered his music a hobby, he said. I don't know how he exactly said it, but he said it in a way that he said he really liked it. It was a pastime. It's nice because he was really busy at his job, and so being a drummer was like a nice hobby to have. And it's like, I'm going to quit this band.
Exactly. We're on different pages.
Yes, I'm your hobby. Like that's what. Yeah, we're totally different pages. I was like, I want to be a rock star. Are you crazy? And I know I'm never going to be, But exactly.
Yeah.
So it's actually interesting because
The intention that you
the
bring to
intention,
it.
it's the
Yeah.
intention. And so, but we need to have these labels because it's like,
Mm.
so you want to be a professional then? And it's like, that's not the point.
Yeah.
It's the importance of the activity. It does something to me. Yes, I have this kind of drive that I want to show. Yes, I want to show the world. I want to be good at this. And I don't have the patience for it because now I'm playing this thing and then I'm playing piano and now all of a sudden I'm painting again and I'm like doing this and
Mm.
thing. But it's all part of something
Hmm.
else, and hobby takes that away. But
Yeah.
it also is sort of, I think, in our language, what it says is that you have a job, that's what you make your money, and then
Hmm.
you have your private life. So you have your, you
Hmm.
know, your private life and your work life, and those are two separate things. And
Yeah.
I think that's a, I'm not big on conspiracy theories. Oh, I'm fascinated by them, by the way. That's another story. But that to me, that is the big conspiracy theory. I think
Mm.
somewhere it's like we are telling ourselves that job and your private life, those are two separate things, and your job can be shitty because it has been for many people, most people throughout history. The job is shitty, it's terrible, but you need to do it because you need to have a living, and there's only few people who are lucky enough to have a job that they actually like. But anyway, most people are stuck in whatever cubicle or in a factory. They don't like it, and then they go home, they leave their job behind, and then at one point they will retire, and then they can spend all their day doing their hobby or something, and
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that's bullshit. That's not true.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
like you
I
have
know.
life. It's life. It's all part of it, and your
Yeah,
hobby is actually often the thing that you love the most. Is
definitely.
actually the thing that you actually really feel great
Yeah.
about.
Thing that makes you feel like you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did some further digging on the word hobby. I was like, right, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And I looked up the sort of etymology of like what is like hobby, because I didn't even really like the way that the word sounded. I was really had beef with this word. I was like, this sounds silly. It's a silly
Yeah.
word. And so I looked into it, and actually the etymology really kind of was the thing that was like nailing the coffin. Like, okay, cool, we need to revolt against this word. That basically the link is hobby. It goes back to like hobby horse, like the kind of the
Oh,
wooden,
right. Yeah.
and the idea being that the why we've taken hobby from hobby horse is, and reduced it to hobby, is that it's an activity or an act that doesn't go anywhere. And I just thought, I I don't think most people that are like, you know, passionate hobbyists
Yeah.
would agree that this act thing that they do, their painting, their photography, their writing, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, I don't think they'd consider that an act that doesn't go anywhere. In
Well,
fact, it's actually it is always going somewhere.
yeah, it's very
But
patronizing
it's
in a
so
way.
so patronizing and so limited to the like, oh well, it's not generating money, or it's not like making you well known,
That's the
or
point. There you go. That's
yeah.
actually, so I heard you kind of struggle by saying, all the creative, all the crafts your family is into.
Mm,
You're like, but it's not professional. It's not, they don't
yeah.
make money from it. Because again, it's labels. It's this like, if you don't
Yeah.
make any money from it, it's
Yeah.
not really serious. Like that's also like what do you mean?
Yeah.
There's more
Yeah.
value. There are way more values than just money. Yes, we
Yeah.
need to have food on our table. Yes, we
Yeah.
and the system we're part of needs us to have money. So for sure, of course.
Mm,
But I always feel that there's also indirect value.
hmm.
I often do a silly kind of warm up game when I do like a session with people, and one of the things I often ask people is to share a secret that their colleagues don't know about them, and most of the time they will share things like, I actually play saxophone, or I used to be a DJ, and or something like. There's a lot of creativity that comes
Mm,
out. They never shared. They never talked about.
hmm.
But it's an activity that shapes you, because every activity you do shapes you. It shapes your
Hmm.
brain. It creates these connections in your brain.
Exactly.
So you learn something. It might not be that when you play the piano, that in your job, all of a sudden you're going to, be the piano player, or there's not a direct link with you making money from your job when in your free time you kind of play piano. But it does create different neural pathways in your brain. It does shape the way you think and the way you understand the world and the way you see the world. Because you are more than your job. You're more than your title. So actually, if you really want to understand people, you want to understand all the things they do. And we talk about the peeling the onion. I know I have a problem with language. So you're exactly to your point. This hobby, the word hobby, but I have a big problem with us, basically, always needing words, and if to make something real, to make it exist. And if it doesn't have a word, we can't talk about it, we can't think about it, we can't discuss it. And then all of a sudden we need to have language around it, and we need to define it. And it's all true, and because it makes us human, and language is important. But we don't see the significance of, or actually the limitation of language, because it's not really the word. So exactly to your point, hobby. All of a sudden there's this thing. It's a hobby, but it's not. It doesn't mean what you're doing is not that. It's not defined by the words. Nothing is defined by words. And so I think that is sort of a problem when you talk about the quest, and you talk about this thing in between, and I don't know how to escape that, and which was my problem with things like design thinking and service design at the time, where all of a sudden there was a definition of it, and then people started arguing about the definition of it, and then there was stuff like that, and it like loses its power because it's boxed in. It becomes an object, a thing, and it loses and all of a sudden you're losing the sight on sort of the essence of it, which is the inverse. It's actually the space that is around it, which is that's where the value is. So I don't know. So I think that we forget about that. So we're asking for job titles, and then we forget about everything else that actually surrounds that job title, which makes that person the person, and makes that person a great salesperson. But he's not a salesperson. He's like, you're not the salesperson. You are this person that does all these other things too, which you don't use, and you don't know that because it doesn't. I don't know. I'm just
and
on.
That's
like, this frustrates me. So I'm like.
No, I completely get it. And yeah, there's a couple of things that come there. And one is that I think having had a family that didn't do their sort of passions professionally, it showed me that was a thing that made me realize from just intuitively, like, oh, well, your job doesn't define who you are as a creative person. Like I didn't growing up, I didn't think of my dad as like, my dad does kind of, worked in the city, doing kind of like commodities trading. Like, but I saw my dad as a guitarist.
Colleagues, do his colleagues know, or is he still working?
He's still working. Yeah, he's still working.
So do his colleagues know he's an awesome guitar player? Does he?
Yeah. He's very like, he's very. He's always been really great at like keeping that going. But I think with all of my family, I've never like the first people that I think of them as the things that they're passionate about, their crafts, and rather than the things that they actually do.
And what do they tell you when they hear you talk about this? Do you talk to them about this? And what do they? You need to get a job.
Well, I do. Well, this has become my job in a completely mad way. Doing these monthly explorations has gone from being something that I just did for me for 5-6 years. It was something that I just it was a thing that I did for me. I didn't expect it to go anywhere. I knew there was something in it because it just felt like I tapped into a way to experience life that was filling the cracks of the day with creativity and tapping into all these different ways of seeing. And just on your point there about like you know, explore, you know, the acts that you kind of, the things that you're passionate about, the things that you do in your day to day shape the way that your brain works, and, you know, opens up different neural pathways. And I kind of got interested with that too, with these quests, that like actually by exploring the world through photography for a month, or through color for a month, or patterns or whatever, I was beginning to actually just feel my brain changing. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
this is all feeding back into me expanding the way that I see the world, which can make me a better creative person. It can make me a better artist manager. It can make me a better consultant when I'm working on, you know, consulting projects.
Well, photography
Yeah,
teaches you to frame. It teaches you the value of looking through a lens, framing it, and creating
yeah.
value that wasn't there because you didn't use that kind of that frame.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
teaches you to see things differently, like drawing. If you
Totally.
draw and you see, if you start drawing things, then all of a sudden you're looking at it in a totally different way. All of a sudden you see it for real because you have to draw
Mm,
it. Or, you know, I think that is such a you know, these are different ways of using your brain and your skills, and it builds something that might not be kind of clearly defined, but I think all of these things have. So I played in a band for a very, very long time. Still do, actually. If I facilitate, or if I do work with a team, I I always think about my early days with being a teenager, playing with a band, trying to kind of get everything together, and everybody playing the same music, or writing music together and agreeing on this, and the tensions that were there. So I learned about teamwork from that.
mm,
I did
mm,
stand-up comedy, and being on stage, to me, that taught me how to be, first of all, a keynote speaker, but also a facilitator,
mm,
by being vulnerable.
mm.
Theater taught me
Being
how.
able to improv.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
right. So
Mm,
you know, that's just what I would say. This is informal learning. It's not the formal education, but the informal education that taught me so much more
yeah.
than the formal education.
Mm,
But it's like, why do I separate these things? And because if you think about it, there's always, and even family, to your point, I mean, what you just said, you know, you have your family, they gave you all those examples and that inspiration, or the kind of things, possibilities, options. And in a way, what if I understand correctly, with your quest, what you do, you also give people all these options, not
mm,
just about professions, but options to see the world, options to kind of, and it's like traveling. If you haven't traveled, you know, so there's a beautiful quote under in Amsterdam. You walk under, there's a bridge near the train station, but there's this quote which is part of a poem by this lady from the 1600s. But it says, if I translate that into English, it says, returning is not the same as staying. So the idea was that if you go somewhere, so you suppose you have a twin brother, you know, and you're living in the same city, and one brother goes and travels the world, comes back, the other stays in the city. You do not live in the same city anymore,
mm,
because you will see
mm-hmm,
things differently because you traveled.
mm,
You filled your brain with these new experiences, which shapes both memory but
mm-hmm,
also imagination.
mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm,
your brain is this machine that builds, kind of creates things that are or possibilities that use
mm,
your imagination, but it's actually building on your memory. So you
mm,
create sort of new memories for people that they can
mm-hmm.
use as pieces of a puzzle to imagine new possibilities. That's basically what you do, which I think.
That is. You've summed it up very, very, very well. Yes, exactly that.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit? So how does that, practically, how do you do that? How does a quest?
How's it
So
work?
I'm interested in being part of that. I want to be a participant or something. How do
Mm.
I sign up? What happens?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're 18 months in. It was last year was very much like pilot mode. We did a
Hmm.
4 month pilot. Um, we had 30 people each month. Well, 30 in January, 30 in February, and then 60 in March. Each month has a different theme. When you sign up, generally you don't know what the theme is going to be until you've signed up. So it's kind of
Cool.
getting people to step into the unknown more with a sense of curiosity than fear, and just going, do you know what? I'm going to go on this creative journey. We're going to explore something for a month, and whatever the theme is, I'm going to get something from it. That's the kind of spirit we're trying to encourage people to have on signing up, rather than being like, oh, but what if I don't like the theme? It's like, just trust us. Like you'll find something. So yeah, people sign up. There's, in the pilot, it was done a pay what you feel basis at the end of the month, but there is like a monthly kind of fee now. And there's 4 workshops over the month. Each week we explore the theme from a different angle. It's all run online at the moment, so people from all over the world sign up. I think we've had people from 20 different countries sign up now over the last year and a half. And basically over the course of the month, through workshops and a dedicated online community, we have an online kind of hub where we post content and stuff as well. We all kind of bring this theme into our lives. So we've done 7 quests since last January. The themes were poetry, movement, color, home, collage, movement, rewilding, and sound. We've just finished sound. And the idea is that you kind of invite this theme into your life over the course of the month. The first session of the month is really about everybody meeting each other. So it's just, that is always one of the absolute highlights for me, is just, we have 30 people in a session, and just hearing the different reasons that people have signed up to something like this and where they're coming from, who they are. It's a really magic moment every time. And then we start focusing on like, okay, what do we each all perceive of this theme? So we do a few exercises that kind of help people unpack, like, what is your association with sound or rewilding or movement or whatever it is. We do lots of sharing with each other, and there's this beautiful moment where people are we do a really just basic word association exercise. Put 5 minutes on the clock, empty your brain of everything that you can think of when sound is the starting point, and we put up all these prompts on the screen of different ways that you could to jog their memory and imagination. And there's a really beautiful moment where people go into breakout rooms and they just simply have to read their lists to each other. That's it. And it's just this really wonderful moment every single quest where there's an aha moment with everybody, where you go, oh, wow, you see sound very, very differently to me. And you see sound very, very differently to me. And there's this amazing moment where you go like, oh, wow, what I thought was possible, or what I thought might happen over the course of this month, exploring whatever the theme is going to be, suddenly the options and the possibilities are now infinitely bigger, because there's 29 in that group. Whereas normally we have about 60 actually over 2 groups. There's up to 60 other people who are all going to influence my journey through sound or movement or color, whatever the theme is, this month. And so our job is really about programming the workshops. We have a guest in week 2 who's kind of like somebody that's like really, really involved in our theme. They're called our guest quester. And then the other workshops are kind of based around things that we've discovered over the course of the quest. But the rest of it is really kind of self-led, with the support of a global community who are all exploring this thing at the same time as you. We have prompts and challenges that we set as well that are kind of relevant to the thing that we've just explored in the session. And that's it. There's no I really try and enforce people, say it's like, want people to know it's not a course. There's no these are the modules. It's not that. It's so the opposite. It's more, it's a framework to move through. I think the outcomes will become clear for everybody individually as they move through it.
It takes a lot of, I think, trust from the participants as well.
Massively,
right,
yeah.
Because I guess a lot of people will go like, what do I get at the end?
Exactly.
What are you teaching me?
Yeah.
That's up
it's
to
been
you.
It's been a hard thing to communicate value with.
Yeah.
Like, because I think people are so used to being like, okay, so what do I get? What am I going to learn that I should part with my money for?
Exactly.
And and it's hard. Oh, I mean, I can. There literally are a list of things. I'm like, well, there's 4 workshops, there's a community, blah, there's these emails. Like that is a kind of exchange of value. But I'm like, but honestly, the real value will be how much you put into it, and surrounded by all of these other people who are also putting it in there. Like the value is in the kind of the commitment, because when, like, God, seriously, the power of 60 people, 40, 50, 60 people all putting their creative energy in the same direction is incredible. Like, and you have to put in to get back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It sounds. It sounds amazing. In a way, I think a lot of people will maybe compare it to things like a retreat or something, like, but a sort of a mental retreat, sort of like, because it does take you away from the ordinary or the the day-to-day stuff, and you really have to. But it depends. So if you are, suppose you go to a retreat with your colleagues or your team or with people you don't know, which is totally different, obviously, but you take your phone and your laptop and you don't, you keep reading up and starting. If you're not really there in the moment and you don't take out as much as you could. So it's always that way, but it's in every meeting, actually. In every meeting, if you're not really committed, if you're not really listening, you don't, I think I think that what you're doing, I think there's maybe not everybody might not know that, or might not know that this is something they actually need. But I think a lot of people actually need to do these things because of our, busy. Everybody's so busy. Everybody's running. We are bombarded with texts and what, and it's like so much information. So it's such a huge overload. And I think that we need to kind of carve out these moments where we actually are really in the moment, and we are there, and we're focused on each other, and we learn from each other. But I think it's a struggle for a lot of people, and I see that I see it with my kids as well. That you're there's always something that you need to do, and there's always a message somewhere waiting for you, or a little thing that's bleeping, or there's a and there's someone sends you a text that after 2 minutes says, "Hello, can you answer me?" Leave me alone. I think that, and I think maybe, I know this might go too far, but this whole, I think that we're also living through an age where we don't have a lot of religion anymore. We don't have a lot of, so people might go look for meditation. And so that's becoming something, or doing yoga, but all that, looking for a space to kind of just be there in the moment, and not rushing through it, and everything being so quick and shallow. And so I think that's something that I think that is of amazing value. And I think there's I shouldn't worry about having to explain it. I think the way you said it is awesome. The power of having those people really focus, and the creativity, the combined creativity, and the combined kind of knowledge and experiences people have that they can share, and insights, or just their own, just sharing everybody else's way of looking at the world can be such an eye-opening thing. Like, really?
Big time. Yeah.
Right? So, which is empathy. In a way, you're describing empathy, right?
Definitely. It's there's so many, I'm pretty deep on these quests now, as you can tell. And in terms of like how I viewed their impact, but also on how many different themes I've explored at this point. Like I think I'm like past 30 now, since the beginning of 2016. And every quest, there is something that teaches me about another kind of just human trait, or just something about the human condition that I just didn't know before. And it's really powerful. Yeah, empathy has a huge amount to do with it. Being able to speak the language of another person, to kind of actually understand them, from being like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it, because I've actually spent a month like I don't completely get it, because people spend a lot longer than a month dedicating themselves to certain things, but you get a little taste.
Well, that's actually really important that what you just said. I think, because I think that's often, at least in my personal opinion, the misunderstanding of empathy is that that you can't really be that other person. You
Yeah.
can't really see the world through their eyes. And the limitation of it is actually the realization of the limitation is,
Hmm.
I would say, that is the empathy, is like you that you cannot understand, but you acknowledge that someone else sees the world differently. You get a little taste of it because you talk to them. You have to co-create with people, so you have to listen to each other, but you can't be that. But you can't say, okay, get it, now I know how you see the world, thank you very much. And then
Hi.
and you're like, I know exactly what that person
Yeah.
thinks, like, and does. And no, you don't. I mean, and one
Yeah.
of the moments it was very apparent to me was when I worked with the refugees. So we were
Mm.
working with refugees from Syria. How can I, being brought up and living in this safe little country, I've never had
Mm.
to run with my kids from a war.
Hmm.
I never had to do that. How can I,
Mm.
be, look through their eyes? So actually knowing that I cannot, but being able to say, so I need them to work with me in order to find solutions for problems they have. I need them to tell me, and I have to listen to them without being arrogant to saying, yeah, I did some research and an interview and a poll, and like, I know how they think. So this is what Syrian refugees need. No, you don't. It's actually the continuous dialogue, which is what you need to have, which is difficult. But
Hmm.
I think that's such an interesting, and in a way, what you're describing is what you're doing. You're saying here, this is what people think, and listen to it.
Hmm.
They, like, be amazed
Hmm.
and think, oh, there's all these other options, right? That's
Yeah.
so. Oh, that's also great, because it makes you very vulnerable. Because, like, your truth is not the truth, but it
Hmm.
also is liberating, I think. And so that, to
Definitely.
me, is creative leadership. Creative leadership is
Yeah.
sort of stretching sort of the boundaries, showing options that you never even considered were options,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you're like, here, there's all these other options. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I never knew that was an option.
I totally. I've thought a lot about what it means to be a creative leader, having stepped into. I guess there was obviously leadership elements, well, lots of leadership elements with managing music artists, but
Mhm.
it's more it's more of a partnership, when you're managing a music artist. But I've really realized it in the last 18 months of running this as a business, like how crazy close the parallels are between like managing a music artist and trying to get, their career going and grow a fan base, like how closely related it is to trying to build a community-based business. Like I feel like I'm trying to break a band right now.
Yeah,
Like
and you are.
that's exactly what it feels like. And
Exactly. That's a startup.
and one of the things that management taught me as being a creative, as being a leader, is like that really good creative leadership is knowing when to lead, but also knowing when to be led, and like leaving space for that to go like, okay, I'm going to sit back and see how this plays out, and be willing to like be wrong, be willing to step into the unknown and see how somebody else would take it. And it's always a bit of a kind of a it's a yeah, not a tug of war, but it's an ebb and a flow. You need to know when to sort of step in and when to step back.
Yeah.
um Especially, yeah, when it's community based. And I'm now just I've got a couple of people that work on creative quests with me now. And um yeah, I really try and practice that. Obviously you kind of want to, as the person, as the founder of the company, of course I want to have a vision and there's things that I want to achieve. But doing these creative quests and over the years that I have, has taught me a kind of, I suppose, a humility. Yeah, that there's always another way of doing things, and it will probably be just as good, if not better, than your way.
Well, it's important to I think to acknowledge that, because if you don't if you don't see that, if you don't really realize that there are other possibilities, then you won't see them either. So
Yeah.
then you get stuck in your way of doing things, and then before you know it, you're on the wrong path, and you have no clue. You didn't even know you. So actually being able to, that's a vulnerability. We're not taught being that vulnerable. We were taught to be an expert and knowing the answers, and that sort of, which is, in a way, that's not really real life. Life is full of things that go wrong, and I think that's our human skill, and I think that's if you're looking at the future with artificial intelligence and quantum computing, we're going to be replaced. A lot of jobs are going to be replaced with artificial intelligence, which and because it just can do a better job at a lot of things. But the thing that we as human beings can do, things are like creativity, but it's very much connected also to, I always say, us being just stupid. Making, we are stupid. Computers can't be stupid. They can't go oops, they go like, because we go like, oh shit, oh god, that went horribly wrong. I dropped it or something. Oh, I forgot this thing. Oh god, I forgot to kind of turn off the heater or something. The stove is still on or something. And then you go like, oh, what happened? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't. That wasn't the intention. Happy accidents. Computers don't make happy accidents.
No, you don't. You don't. Yeah, you don't run a computer program for it to sort of be imperfect.
It's an interesting thought, by the way. like messing things up. Like, oops.
Exactly. Oh my god. Because that would be pretty mad.
That'd be really maybe dangerous. I don't know. I think I'm not sure if artificial intelligence can ever do that. I mean, I don't know if things are going really weird. I mean, in the future is going to be really weird, but still, I think
the present is really weird.
Yeah.
The future's going to be weirder, but it's pretty weird right now.
It's weird all over. Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. It is totally weird. Well, in weird times, in strange times, in times that are crazy and chaotic and we don't understand, don't you just want to be that person that is in between those spaces? Kind of, being able to look up and look around and recognize these different spaces instead of being heads down and just seeing your own little thing. So, I mean, I think we need people like yourself to kind of lead us in that space, or at least be part of the conversation, and not just the people who are just heads down. We need those people that say, yeah, wait a minute, what? Well, there are all these other options. There's not just this. It's not just like this or that. It's like, no, there's a gazillion options, and there might be better ways. I think that's a way of looking and a skill that we need for now. But
100%.
But also for the future.
Definitely. We are definitely in a time where lots of things are and have to be reimagined, and to get to that space, you're going to have to create these in between spaces that we're talking about for people, all kinds of people, to come together and experiment with possibility and imagination. It has to happen, because
that's where the bridge, that's where the connection is. That's so we don't stay in our own spaces. But it is everywhere. So that's how it's so fascinating. It's everywhere. It is in you can look at it in you can talk about politics or societies or communities, but we also, even in business, companies or industries are colliding. Everything is kind of blending and merging, and I think that is part of the sort of the anxiety a lot of people have. Because it's so unclear. Everything is kind of colliding. All the companies are basically interested in your data, and they want they want to be part of your household. They want to know your kids. They want to know they're all in. They want to know your health. They want to be involved in everything. Amazon is taking over the planet, and et cetera, et cetera. So this whole thing is happening, and we all have our QR codes, and then there's artificial intelligence, and quantum computing is going to blow our mind. Is already blowing our minds, but we don't even know what that's going to do. So there's this what we call this new industrial revolution in a way. But I think there's a shift, and then we have this COVID thing, and then we have the environment, and there's all this stress, and then there's energy, and then so I really feel that needs people, to see sort of these defined kind of spaces and say, hey, but we get together in the space in between. We need to have that safe space, which is okay, and where we don't know. Where we actually don't know what it is, because it's in between, and we have I don't know what that is, and making people comfortable, exactly what you're doing with your quests, actually making people feel safe in a space that they don't know, is that's what we need.
Definitely. And I hope for the people that do these quests that feeling of being in a space for however long people join us for, a month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever, that the feeling of getting uncomfortable with the kind of uncomfortable of not knowing, the uncertainty, I really hope that that's something that people take back into their day-to-day lives, whether it's a conversation they need to have with a partner or a boss, or there's something that they want to stand up to, a company in their community or whatever. It's that having spent time dealing with the unknown, that you kind of feel a bit more prepared than you were before taking on a quest. Because sometimes I think that we use the themes as kind of the themes are really a compass for, they're just a kind of a way to navigate over the month. But sometimes I actually think that the true root of what Creative Quest is about, that the themes are actually, and I don't mean this to sort of degrade the value of the themes, because they are very valuable, but the themes are kind of arbitrary in what actually people will take, I think, from the quests. I think the quest, actually the heart of it is about teaching people to be more curious, live with more empathy, not worry about getting things right all the time, learning to treat the unknown with more curiosity over fear. Those are really, and plenty of other stuff, but all those things are really, and that we're all creative in our own way at the end of the day, and we all see the world differently. Those are all the things that are really at the heart of it, and the themes are just the way that we explore that.
Thank you for the talk. That is awesome.
Thank you for brilliant questions. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you very much.